Welcome back, Chameleon, to my channel of Aspie Answers. For those of you who are new and landed on my page, I welcome you all. I'm Aspie Answers as the host of my podcast Aspie Answers, as well as the host of Aspie Answers on the YouTube channel. I educate and advocate to you all, as well as navigating through life with autism and mental health, taking you all on a journey when I'm able to do some fun and games. So if you're into any of these and more, feel free to smash that subscribe button on the bottom right hand corner and turn on the notification bell so don't miss any future updates. Usually I post either Monday to Friday, but it may subject to change, maybe 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, time dependent on these everyday projects that I'm doing. It'll be much appreciated. So as you can see, before I begin this, yes, as promised, into one of my videos. You may have seen the quick teaser on my Instagram and Twitter based on my new merch. This design and more is available on my site of spreadshirt.com, Life of an Aspie. So if you're into any of these designs or more, feel free to come over and visit my store to support the cause, because any money will be much appreciated to go into what I'm doing for these future projects of what I'm doing, be it my merch, running this as a business, versus also hopefully my podcast and so much more that you'll see later today, hopefully. As I mentioned, my website is still in the works as well while I'm designing it up, so I'll keep you guys posted on that also. So this one's going to be a different topic for now, even though most of the topics I have been clearly sharing right now is supposed to be autism and Aspergers syndrome, all about it, and for my podcast especially, but most of that will be on the podcast as well. Don't forever fret, I'm still working on the same one that I talked about a few days ago now. If you have recalled, based on one of the topics, it'll be there for the listeners that wants to listen to it more than just watching me on the screen here. As you are aware, basically, as it's labelled above me, this one's going to be called How to Identify Trauma in Autistic People, and that hopefully, in saying this, also as a disclaimer that I forgot to add in the very beginning, some of it may, or shall we say, it could be a trigger warning. Some of the topics that may be touchy, which I humbly apologise, but I want to clearly address these, as I said, because some of these topics that I believe in, the mental health versus the autism and health and everything I'm all about, that I want to actually bring out as many as I can to raise awareness on these topics that may not have been discussed or what have you, either in the autistic community or the mental health community as of. So therefore, please bear in mind, if it is going to be triggering for some of the topics, feel free to not, watch or listen to these. I am not, going to be, what's the word, discouraged if need be, because it's just normal, because it's a matter of just respecting one another's differences of opinion and thoughts and whatnot. So as said, hopefully we can just do this. So let's begin this before going around the time. As we know, being an autistic, as to anyone in the community, be it on the mental health versus autistic community, or even people that are with different conditions as well, may find it an everyday struggle, and it can be difficult. I have been finding it difficult, especially when I've been trying to be networking with others in certain network or group, I would say, based on mental health and autism, because of, let's be honest, fear of what people may say or think about me as an autistic, especially because, as I said before, that sometimes many people may dismiss me for being that, or it could be just other reasons, because they may not know how to go about taking care of someone that is autistic. Because as I said before, so many times before, I can't stress it enough, once you meet one autistic, don't forever assume that they're the same, because as we come from a different range of spectrum right now, and that in saying this, basically, that it is important that we meet our needs somewhere in the middle, regardless who it may be. Yes, I know, basically, in some ways, like with some of the community groups I've also been in, just to bear in mind, I'm not trying to slap anybody or anyone, I'm not going to name names here or whatever, this is just based on my experience from the group I've been in, that they're going maybe the wrong way, and how, we as autistics should act, think, speak and stuff. And this leads to the terminology of ableism, which I clearly mentioned in one of my video series about ableism. So if you want to know more, I'll put it in the icon above me of the playlist. This is also in the description box below me, so that you can understand it. Because at this point of time, when I have been in some of these community groups, some of these people are telling us how to think, act and say and do. You got to remember that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, regardless what it may be, and some of us maybe are willing to go the extra mile to actually focus on the weaknesses if you just point us in the right direction. It's all about patience, guidance and support, as well as accepting us for who and what we are, not just the label of being autistic or what have you. It's just the whole everyday package of us. Like, say for example, you guys trying to accept me as a whole, as Karen or Aspie Answers, to actually, be in the flesh, not just for the sake of my mental health and autism trait and what have you. I feel that we should be able to express ourselves in a special, unique way, be it if it's stimming, be it if we solely focus on one topic at a time or what have you, if a beloved subject, that we should be able to express it in our unique ways, regardless of people may think how we express it may be the wrong way, be it if we're stimming, be it if we're having our meltdowns and whatever else. We should be able to be comfortable in our own skin, as well as being able to, like I said, express ourselves. Being confident is the word I'm looking for. I feel also we shouldn't have to blend in, basically, or fit in who you please people, or just fit in everyday's expectations of people that comes in our circle, because I feel that at this point of time, as I said so many times before, that many of us autistic, we do our darn hardest in the neurotypical world to fit in and blend in anyway, just to mask and, imitate, mimic what is we think to us, even if, like I said before, for us mask, it can have dire consequences to our mental health and what have you. I feel also we shouldn't have to please people, no way Jose. We should be able to be ourselves around others, so we shouldn't have to feel that, we're, kind of feel uncomfortable that we should be able to, express ourselves. Yet, I believe for many of us autistics, we may find it difficult to talk or do things with others around us, or express our feelings and emotions, or what have you. We are still human, we make mistakes as well, bear in mind. But when we get involved with your everyday activities, if you just invited us on those everyday activities, you'll be amazed to see what we can offer you, or what we can actually do for ourselves and as well as with others around us. Autistic is people are especially vulnerable to trauma, so this is the part I'm talking about today, trauma, so bear with me. Trauma for us autistics can be really hard for us to deal with on the daily, or what have you, or just hard to deal with no matter what it was that we were dealing with, or even just facing head on, regardless if we're dealing with it right now or in the past. It's still, there in our minds, or what have you. As we know, trauma affects people in many different ways as to what grief does. So we may often experience intense emotions, challenging environments, discrimination, stigmatization from others, and sometimes maybe a form of mental and physical abuse like any other normal human being, leaving us at the risk of maybe having to go through the trauma, maybe by ourselves or whatever. People that come in our circle needs to come to more understanding though, and to be more patient with us no matter what we are going through or facing at that given moment of time. So be supportive of us, because obviously it's important to do so in saying this, because we need as much support as any other person in the block, be it if you're a normal neurotypical or someone with mental health in that. Because I've noticed from what I've been through, sometimes I keep to myself basically, even though I may look happy as Larry here on the screen or maybe in public and stuff, but sometimes, be honest with you, my mental health isn't always good, and I hide away and maybe have my quiet meltdowns and what have you, even though yes, it may be embarrassing to some people or frustrating for some people when for us in public, but I can't control my emotions with these meltdowns. If it happens, it happens, as well as when it comes down to knowing where my triggers are going to likely to get involved with my anxiety attacks and some other mental health issues I go with. But as always, communication is key and can be, as I said, really complicated with autistic people, so present and cause of trauma can be harder to maybe identify what's going on. So it's important to seek professional help to identify and treat trauma. Assessing possible causes and symptoms can help you decide whether and when to make a doctor's appointment with your loved one or whoever that is going through it. So I'm going through now, as a conventional guide, this will be 3 different methods, and set in these 3 methods to go about how to identify trauma in autistic people. So method 1 is going to be coming under the terminology or title, considering the causes and risks of trauma. So number 1 is recognize common causes of trauma for the autistic people. Autistic people can be traumatized by the same things that can cause trauma with everyday people of the non-autistic people, or like I usually say, neurotypicals or neurodivergent. So consider whether your loved one has experienced severe stress such as 1. Natural disasters, abuse, either emotional, physical, sexual, and neglect, witnessing others being abused, war, injury or life-threatening health-changing problems, death, end of an important relationship that they felt was important to them, be it a friendship or a relationship that they've been in with their partner for many years and whatnot. Again, sexual assault, trauma in the family, example, maybe a boy that is being traumatized by watching his father trauma, witnessing or being impacted by a violent crime, burglary, mugging, road rage, exposure to this environment such as bad educational environment, such as a teacher maybe being impatient with their learning and what have you, unsupportive group home environment, living in a country which treats disabled people poorly. This in itself, basically, as I said before I continue, is quite common with some of these triggers or causes of trauma. This can affect people in any given moment of time, but again, it's also important to know when is the best time to get the help that we need. Number 2, keep an eye out for bullying. As we know, basically, unfortunately, many of us autistic people would become vulnerable to bullying, and I have mentioned about bullying in my life story with being bullied and whatnot, so you can see it in the icon above me in the description box below me, as well as some other ones about maybe rising above it as a tip and advice. Because obviously, for us being vulnerable, we will most likely stand out more to people, and that sometimes, as we know, many of us autistics lack the social skills to handle the everyday situation of being bullied or whatever it may be. Bullying incidents over time can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD in victims. This includes teasing, violence, rumors, exclusion, and cyberbullying. Autistic people are at high risk for bullying, and this may lead to trauma, or to this case, or our vulnerability, it may lead to our mental health going downhill, and when that mental health goes downhill, disorder or PTSD in victims. This includes, it leads to dire consequences. Number 3, consider how they are treated in therapy. There are many different schools of therapy, as we know. Basically, I have mentioned all the different types of therapies, which I'll link in the icon above me and in the description box below me for the playlist, which there are more to come, hopefully, of what I've researched, so stay tuned for that. This, as we say, are many different schools of therapies aimed at helping autistic people, but unfortunately, some of the everyday practitioners, types of therapy and methodology can end up psychologically harming the people they are seen to help. For instance, combined therapy, holding therapy, such as, which is known for grabbing and restraining a person against their own will. Restraint and seclusion can all cause trauma. Therapy should be a safe environment and never involve cruelty. It should be a safe haven for us to be able to talk out our feelings or what have you, being able to let our emotions go if we feel our meltdown or anxiety attack is coming on. We shouldn't be feeling like we're being judged by the therapist or what have you. As well, I believe they shouldn't also push the person for getting upset, yell at them, lock them in a room or what have you, or grab them without consent. If the therapist is very harsh and advises you to be harsh, to consider it as a red flag and maybe continue to find a therapist that will, understand you and be loving and supportive of you. Remember that autistic people can also experience emotional abuse is number 4. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and may not be able to communicate about it. Autistic people can experience severe psychological pain as well from being mistreated, even if they don't show the signs the same way that a non-autistic person might show. In addition, autistic people might be mistreated in ways related to their disability, including adults who label any emotional distress as a tantrum and push the person harder or being abusive. People who have experienced compliance training are at a greater damage or danger for sexual abuse because they don't know how to say or set boundaries. If having their needs met is conditional upon certain behaviours that is supposed to be deemed appropriate from the professionals or just the person that is helping the autistic, example, no access to food unless they have a certain amount of tokens for obedience, this is still a form of abuse. Number 5, consider non-trauma related issues. There are many different stresses that will get involved for an autistic person that may face head on, and not all of them are caused by traumatic events, just to be in mind. Take the possibility of trauma related and non-trauma related issues seriously, however. Anxiety and depression are the most common in autistic people and may not have one single cause. So gender dysphoria can sometimes look like trauma and may heighten when puberty does start. Helping the person transition to the correct gender and surrounding them with the right supportive people can ease the emotional pain and can help them become a healthier and happier person. Method 2. Identifying physical signs. Number 1, notice if the autistic person reports that they're feeling unwell. Due to alexithymia, which is obviously they're not recognizing the emotions or feelings or feeling the emotions and feelings themselves, basically, autistic people may have a harder time understanding their own emotions and may only notice physical problems at hand. The autistic person may mention headache, stomach ache, muscle tension, or any other physical element or problem caused by the stress. 2, take regression seriously without jumping to the conclusion it's caused by trauma. Under stress, an autistic person may revert to younger behaviour, sucking their thumb, wetting their bed, losing the ability to speak, or no longer using their skill they once had learned recently. This may be caused by trauma or by something else. Regression can be a difficult symptom to pin down in autistic people, however, because they may regress due to many different stresses and they may often hit milestones at their own pace. A number of stresses can cause autistic regression. It can also be caused by moving to a new home, too much pressure in therapy, almost not enough routine or downtime for themselves, and so on and so forth. Trauma is one of the several potential causes. The autistic person hasn't permanently lost the skill, however, when in regression they are simply too overtaxed to use more sophisticated skills. If and when they have more energy again, they will most likely be able to use that skill set that they have used again and again. Conversely though, some teens become more independent after trauma or oscillate between regression and independence on their own. 3, notice serious changes in stims. As we know, basically, as I said before, we use different forms of stims in our everyday life regardless what they are, and I have mentioned what stims are and whatnot in a stimming playlist. I'll link it above me and in the description box below me. So therefore, a kind one is here. Rocking and stimming can signal trauma in non-autistic, but it's normal for many autistic people. Instead, notice if your loved one is stimming a lot more or a lot less than usual. If they have a adopted self-interest when this wasn't a problem before. This can be an indicator as a problem. 4. Consider changes in sensory processing. This can manifest in many ways in itself as a more sensitive sensory autism or system, and a traumatized autistic person may have their sensory issues worsen. For example, a young woman who ordinarily enjoys thunderstorms may act or starts crying and covering her ears when she hears the thunder. Your loved one may startle more easily than usual. They may have more frequent meltdowns, shutdowns, and instances of a sensory overload. 5. Watch for changes in appetite and their sleeping habits. Loved one may eat less, overeat for comfort, or complain of digestive issues that they didn't have before. They may face sleeplessness, frequent nightmares, or fatigue. 6. Notice the development of new touch avoidant behaviours. Some autistic people get easily overwhelmed by physical touch, and this is not a cause for concern, even though, as we know, basically some autistic that I'm aware of don't like being touched. Some may like being touched, but it's just a matter of knowing your personal boundaries and what you like and don't like here. But if your son or daughter who you love getting tickled suddenly hates it, or your sister who loves kisses starts panicking when getting kissed, this might be a sign that someone has hurt them. If they suddenly pick one certain person, it might mean that this person may have mistreated them or hurt them. Last but not least, method 3, identifying emotional systems. Number 1, as we know, as a form of advice, I should say, trauma can look slightly different on an autistic person than autistics. As I said, your loved one may experience some or all of these symptoms I'm about to address to you today. Number 1, keep an eye on your loved one after a potentially traumatic event. Because autistic people can have difficulty recognizing their own emotions, as I mentioned before, your loved one may not realize that their feelings are different from usual, or that they are suffering. This makes it especially important to speak up if you see them struggling. They may lack the self-monitoring skills to recognize it themselves. Number 2, compare the person's current behavior with what it is typical for them. Extreme behavior, personality shift, and mood swings may follow with the trauma that has been done to them. Your loved one may start becoming more, maybe overachieving, overly compliant, eager to please, afraid to say no, hyperactive, passive, lethargic, flat affect compared to the usual, crying more often, frequent meltdowns, acting out, aggressive, impulsive, angry, so on and so forth. 3. Notice signs of withdrawal from the world. The onset of a mental illness such as PTSD, anxiety, depression may be characterized by a person withdrawing from their own world or their loved ones in general, talking less and spending more time alone. This sign can be a symptom of trauma and or an illness such as depression. If your loved one becomes self-isolating, it may mean that something is wrong. It's normal for autistic people to be introverted, having trouble making friends, not wanting to socialize much, and or go through periods where they want more alone time for themselves. Compare your loved one's current behavior to what's normal for them. Number 4, watch for avoidance behaviors. Your loved one may start avoiding things that remind them of the traumatic event, whether this means crying whenever they see a pale man with a mustache, or avoiding driving near the place where they had compliance therapy. 5. Pay attention if the autistic person loses interest in relationships and activities that they ordinarily love. A traumatized person may get bored easily, lose interest in friends and hobbies, and show signs of isolation and depression. Try to involve the autistic person as much as you can in conversation and everyday activities or pastimes related to their special interest at hand, and notice how they may react. Not all autistic will display this symptom. Being able to be distracted for a little while does not disqualify them from being traumatized. Some autistic people may attempt to hide their pain from others and put on a cheerful mask in front of others because they think that's how to be nice. This can make trauma more difficult to detect. Number 6, notice if the autistic person becomes clingy to a person, place, or a favorite object. It's normal for autistic people to have a favorite object or two, such as a stuffed animal or a piece of string for stimming, and to be upset if they can't find it. However, if the person starts clinging and panicking at the slightest idea of being parted from the person or that particular item that they love to cling on to, and being upset if they can't find it or what have you, it may suggest that they may not feel secure on their own, and they may not feel confident enough to being on their own as well. They may be lacking of confidence in themselves. Don't try to separate them from a comfort object. Taking the comfort item will not make the person even feel better. Instead, work on getting them to help to face the fear that's causing them to cling, and in time hopefully they will not need it so much. 7. Consider their ability to focus. People can feel fatigue and difficulty concentrating, so their performance at school may slip or deteriorate over time. They may find it harder to maintain the same level of performance that they maintained throughout the years of their schooling, or what have you. Young children may appear listless and disinterested when offered an activity that they usually enjoy. 8. Watch for a loss of confidence in themselves and or others around them. As I said, your loved one may become insecure and withdrawn. They may have a harder time trusting others around them because no one could prevent the traumatic event, or because people made things worse than they needed the help the first time. Consider what your loved one talks about. general. If the autistic person seems to be fixating on fears, sadness, or death, then they are probably suffering psychologically. If they talk a lot about what happened or being upset, it's probably because they are upset. Obsession with safety or death, blaming themselves for the event that happened to them, fears that the traumatic event will occur, reporting frequent nightmares, suicidal thoughts. 10. Recognize that grief and trauma move at different speeds for different people on the autism spectrum especially. If your loved one is traumatized, they may show it the right way or may go about it the wrong way. It may also take weeks or months to surface. Keep an eye on them though, however, for a while in case it takes longer for the symptoms to show up. In general, males are more likely to show anger type symptoms early on, where females are more likely to experience delayed and heavily internalized reactions. However, your loved one may or not follow this type pattern, as individuals may vary in their response to trauma time and time again. Method 4. Moving forward. 1. Take your loved one to a counsellor or therapist. If you think it's time for your person to benefit to seeing someone like a therapist, or maybe doing some therapy such as cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, psychotherapy, hypotherapy, family therapy, and all specific types of counselling like group counselling, try booking and take appointments with several different therapists, then seeing which one will work best for your loved one and continue with it. Ask your loved one if you'd like them to sit in on the appointment or wait outside for them once they're finished. It's always best to not force yourself to be present if they don't want you there. Sometimes they might be able to work it out on themselves. 2. Encourage them to talk to you if they want. Your loved one may not be able to handle their feelings, so tell them that they can talk to you. This can help them to know that they can seek help when needed and hopefully be able to trust you when ready to open up when they're having this rough time. Don't say that you'll listen and then proceed to ignore them or steamroll their feelings. Instead, listen and validate their feelings. If they come to you at a bad time, just be honest with them and say, for example, I'm really tired right now. I need a nap before I can be good at talking to you. I do want to talk as soon as I can to become a good listener again. Can we talk maybe after supper? Some key examples of what you can say to an autistic. 3. Take care of yourself too. It's important, basically, you can't be, any good to someone for helping them if you haven't taken care of yourself first, because obviously, as they say, sometimes you need to come first before anyone else, if need be, for your sake of your mental health and mental well-being and what have you. Ask yourself what you need right now. Example, a hug, a walk, a warm shower, etc. And then take care of yourself. It's okay to set certain boundaries if you are feeling stressed and drained yourself. For example, if your loved one wants to talk but you're exhausted, just say to them, I'm feeling really tired right now. It's not a good time to talk. I need to be alone. Maybe you could talk to dad, mum, whoever, or spend some time drawing pictures or whatever you enjoy doing. Consider joining a help or support group or going to a counselling yourself if need be. 4. Be patient and kind to the autistic person. Your support can help them cope with your deal dramatically. Coping with trauma can be scary and challenging, and it really helps for them to know that they're not alone in this process. 5. Help make sure they get plenty of downtime. Autistic people in general need a lot of relaxation time, especially if they are in additional stress. Giving them the quiet time helps them to reduce the build-up of stress. Encourage them to work on their special interests. For example, if your daughter obsesses over writing or your friend really loves a specific TV show, they should spend less time with it, or lots of time with that, I should say. It can help them to cope. Try to keep an eye out on your autistic person from spending time on their special interests, which can be painful for them. 8. Spend time doing fun things together. Emotional health isn't just about dealing with the negative experiences, however. It includes making time for the positive ones so that you can actually, be happy, live freely. Try to get some one-on-one time with the autistic person that you're hanging out with and do enjoyable activities together. Make positive memories and have fun. If they're a family member living at home with you, try to get some one-on-one time each day. If you see them less often, this may be feasible. Sometimes the person will want to have fun, sometimes they'll want to talk about their feelings, and sometimes they'll want to be alone. Pay attention to their needs as always, and if you're not sure, just ask what they like to do. So it's always important to ask, so to speak. Number 7, give them time and space to process their own everyday feelings. Healing from trauma can take a lot of time, so be patient with your autistic. Just like anything in life, sometimes some things will take time, be it if we've lost someone, be it if we've been through a traumatic event, or what have you. Keep the attitude of being in there for the long haul with the autistic, be there for the good and the bad, not just for the good times, because I've noticed that some people are only there for the good times, and just when certain things get too hard for the other person that is supporting the autistic person or what have you, they tend to just drop off like flies. Sometimes people find art helpful for coping with trauma. Try giving your loved one some art supplies and encouraging them to draw or paint about whatever they feel like. Don't scold them for taking a long time to heal for it, like I said. Instead, deal with their frustration in private. They should focus on taking care of themselves, not to try hide their feelings around you. Last but not least, 8. Take their feelings seriously. Sometimes your loved one may feel like talking about their pain. When they do, listen carefully and validate their feelings. Never judge, never criticize them or what have you. Some autistic people struggle to understand their own everyday emotions, as I said. If they seem stressed, try asking questions like, are you sad? What are you worried? What can I do to help you? And what have you. Just like, again, be patient in the time of need. So this quickly ends basically the video of how to identify trauma in autistic people. If you like this, make like, comment below if you've been through trauma, and if autistic or not. Basically, I want to ask this, if you are willing to open up your story about trauma, how you went through it and stuff and whatnot, and maybe there's some tips and advice that I may have missed of what you want people to know about, feel free to do so in the comment section below. As I said, if you do decide to comment and you see some of the delicate topics sort of thing, please be respectable in the comments, because as I said, I'm trying to make this as a healthy, free environment for people. So also, where to find me, this again will be listed in the socials, but just to tell you right now is Facebook is my Aspie.answers, my Twitter again will be Aspie Answers, which are both capital A. Spotify obviously is Aspie Answers, which is capital A, capital A. Patreon is my crowdfunding page right now. You find me on patreon.com, Aspie Answers. For those of you who don't know what Patreon is today, those who are listening that are new, I have this set up for funding for future projects like this one of my podcast versus my merch that I've been designed. It's like a crowdfunding page or funding page for creators like me, or content creators, music creators, whoever it may be, they're seeking out funding to support themselves in a way of maybe they need extra equipment for their cameras versus maybe their radio equipment if they were doing something similar like I am doing today, or covering their rent, travel costs, what have you. And in saying this, also basically for the merch, you'll see me basically maybe wearing it once in a while on my YouTube channel, as well as maybe, you know, out and about in public. And so in saying this, my merch site is bridget.com life-and-n-aspie. So this wraps up everything. I want to thank you all for listening right now. Follow me on the socials that were listed below. Subscribe, share this podcast to friends and family. If you want to, feel free to become a Patreon to support this future project, as well as many others that is in the works as of this time. Feel free to donate, big or small, with me and the journey of it. And also my merch obviously will cover the cost for this as well. So I'll catch you all again on the other side. Aspie signing out for now, and bye.